Imagine arriving at work on what seemed like an ordinary Friday morning. The streets were quiet. The city was just beginning to wake up. Inside Bangladesh Bank, employees expected another routine day. Computers powered on, paperwork began piling up, and nothing seemed out of place. Then someone noticed something impossible. Millions of dollars had left the bank. At first, it looked like a technical error. Large financial institutions process enormous transactions every day, and mistakes can happen. But as more records were checked, the picture became far more disturbing. This wasn't a mistake. Someone had broken into one of the world's most trusted financial systems. There were no shattered windows, no masked robbers, no getaway cars waiting outside. Not a single gunshot had been fired. Instead, thousands of miles away, someone had quietly launched one of the boldest cyberattacks in banking history. Their target wasn't just a bank. It was Bangladesh's central bank, the institution responsible for managing billions of dollars in national reserves and maintaining confidence in the country's financial system. Part of those reserves were held in an account at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, one of the most secure financial institutions in the world. For decades, it had been trusted by governments across the globe to safeguard enormous sums of money. To most people, stealing from a place like that sounded impossible. But impossible was exactly what the attackers intended to prove wrong. They didn't rely on force. They relied on patience. Months before anyone realized something was wrong, the attackers had already begun laying the groundwork. They studied the bank systems, learned how its international payment process worked, and waited for the right opportunity. Then, on the night of February 4, 2016, as the workweek ended in Bangladesh, they made their move. Using the bank's access to the SWIFT international payment network, the attackers sent dozens of fraudulent payment instructions from Bangladesh banks, account at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Each instruction looked legitimate. Each appeared to come from authorized bank officials. Each requested that millions of dollars be transferred to accounts in other countries. Within hours, the requests added up to an astonishing figure, nearly $951 million US. If every transfer had gone through, it would have been one of the largest financial thefts in history. At first, everything seemed to be going exactly according to the attackers' plan. Some payment orders were processed. Money began moving across international banking networks. No alarms, no dramatic warnings, just numbers quietly disappearing from one account and appearing in another. But then, something incredibly small changed everything. A simple spelling mistake. One of the fraudulent payment instructions referred to a Sri Lankan organization using the word foundation. Except the attackers misspelled it. Instead of foundation, the payment instruction read foundation. To most people, that typo would seem insignificant. Inside the banking system, however, it raised questions. Questions led to phone calls. Phone calls led to delays. And those delays gave investigators precious time. The remaining payment requests were frozen before they could be completed. The attackers had attempted to steal nearly $1 billion. They succeeded in moving about $101 million before the operation was stopped. Some of it disappeared into casinos. Some of it was recovered after an international investigation. And some of it has never been recovered to this day. What began as a few quiet computer commands had triggered a global investigation involving banks, governments, cybersecurity experts, and law enforcement agencies across multiple countries. The case exposed weaknesses in systems that many believed were virtually impossible to compromise. And it forced financial institutions around the world to ask an uncomfortable question. Enjoying the story? Subscribe for more unbelievable true stories. The obvious question was simple. How could anyone break into a central bank without setting foot inside it? The answer wasn't brute force. It was preparation. Investigators believe the attackers spent months learning how the bank operated before they launched the theft. Instead of trying to smash through layers of security in a single night, they patiently gathered information and waited for the perfect opportunity. Every large international bank relies on secure computer systems to communicate with other financial institutions around the world. One of the most important of these systems is known as SWIFT, a global messaging network that allows banks to send authenticated payment instructions. It's important to understand one thing. SWIFT doesn't actually move the money itself. It sends highly trusted instructions telling other banks where the money should go. If those instructions appear legitimate, the receiving bank may process them. The attackers understood that. Somehow, they gained access to Bangladesh Bank's internal network and were able to create fraudulent payment messages that looked authentic. They carefully formatted the requests to resemble normal international transactions, making them difficult to spot immediately. Timing was everything. The attack began on a Thursday night in Bangladesh, just before the weekend, when many bank employees would be away from the office. At the same time, differences in international business hours reduced the chance that suspicious requests would be questioned quickly. It wasn't luck. It was planning. If every request had been approved, almost $951 million would have disappeared from the bank's account. It was one of the narrowest escapes in modern banking history. But recovering the stolen money would prove to be an entirely different challenge. The money had already crossed international borders. Some of it had been routed into accounts in the Philippines. As investigators pieced together the attack, another unsettling realization emerged. This wasn't simply the story of clever hackers. It was a warning. If a central bank could be targeted so successfully, then every financial institution connected to the global banking system had reason to reassess its own security. Banks around the world began reviewing their cybersecurity practices. Governments invested more heavily in digital defenses. Security experts issued new recommendations for protecting critical financial infrastructure. The Bangladesh bank cyber heist became more than just a crime. It became a turning point, a reminder that in the modern world, the most dangerous bank robber may never walk through the front door. They may never carry a weapon. They may never even enter the same country. All they need is patience, planning, and a single opportunity. In the months that followed, investigators continued piecing together one of the most complex financial crimes ever attempted. Cybersecurity experts analyzed malware found inside the bank systems. Financial investigators traced money across multiple jurisdictions. Law enforcement agencies from several countries worked together to understand how such a carefully coordinated attack had unfolded. Public reports have linked the attack to a sophisticated hacking group that many governments and cybersecurity firms believe operates on behalf of North Korea. Those allegations have been repeated by multiple authorities over the years, although the individuals responsible have not been brought before a court to answer for the crime. For Bangladesh Bank, the consequences went far beyond the money. The attack exposed weaknesses in cybersecurity, internal controls, and international communication. It also damaged confidence in systems that millions of people had always assumed were nearly impossible to compromise. Banks around the world paid close attention. Financial institutions strengthened cybersecurity. Employees received additional training. Critical systems were upgraded. Organizations introduced stricter monitoring, stronger authentication, and faster procedures for identifying suspicious transactions. The rules of digital banking had changed. Today, every time billions of dollars move silently across international banking networks, layers of security are working in the background because of lessons learned from incidents like this one. Yet one uncomfortable truth remains. Technology continues to evolve. So do the people trying to exploit it. The next major cyberattack may not target a central bank. It could target a private company, a government agency, or even infrastructure that millions of people depend on every single day. The Bangladesh bank cyber heist reminds us that the greatest threats of the digital age rarely announce themselves with sirens or explosions. Sometimes they arrive as ordinary-looking computer messages, a few lines of text, a handful of numbers, and a decision that takes only seconds to approve. If this story surprised you, click the subscribe button. There are many more hidden stories like it. Stories of billion-dollar frauds, impossible prison escapes, corporate empires that collapsed overnight, and mysteries that remain unsolved to this day. Because sometimes, the most unbelievable stories aren't fiction. They really happened.